Hello and welcome to OT the podcast. We're here to talk about watches, time, and aging like fine wine. My name's Felix Schultz.
And I'm Andy Green. How you going, Felix?
Getting older.
Pinoir Schultz.
I don't know if I'd be a Pinoir. I'd probably
No,
be
what
some
would you
sort
be?
of hearty cab sav.
Oh yeah, do you know what I'd be?
Fruity red.
I reckon it'd be like a sparkling Shiraz.
Maybe it'd be a rosé.
Nice summer beverage. I think that's me.
Okay. All right. Nice. I like this. I got a question for you. What would our guest, peer, colleague, dare I say friend, Ross Povey, aka Tudor Collector, what would he be as a wine?
I feel like he's a whiskey man.
Well, that wasn't the question.
Yeah, no, I don't think he considers wine. I feel like he's just on whiskey.
It'd be a fine champagne.
Yeah, true. Something sparkly.
Something effervescent and bubbly. The cat's out of the bag there, Andy. We talked to Ross Povey.
Who is Ross Povey?
He's many people. He's the founder of Tudor Collector.
Mhm.
He's an expert, as you might have surmised from that name, on Tudor, but also really, really big into Rolex, specifically gem set Rolex, which is something we sort of dive deeper than usual into. What else does he do? I mean, he's just a staple of the UK watch scene.
Does make
He's
this revolution.
Yeah, he's
UK?
he's I think editor in chief of Revo UK, but he's a lovely guy. I think that's all we need to say about him. He's a good person to listen to. Like in this interview, like we sort of just stopped asking questions and like just let him drop knowledge on us in his calming Northern English accent.
Yeah, he's a lovely guy, Felix. I can't wait to talk to him.
Well, I mean, yeah, sure. He is. Let's do that shortly. But before then, Andy, we've been seeing watches.
We have. We saw the new. So we talked about Rolex last week. We also saw the new Tudor collection.
Well, you went to a party, didn't you, as well?
Yeah, that's right. You missed it.
Yeah, I was surprisingly unwell. And yeah, we had thoughts about the Black Bay Pro.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
Okay, so the Black Bay Pro comes on a few straps. My favorite is the fabric strap.
Me too.
I think it pulls a little bit nicer to the wrist. One thing that surprised me was the dome of the crystal. It was pretty significant. It's a pretty thick dome, but the watch itself isn't that thick. Like I would put it as less chunky than the original Black Bay.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's hard not to be more chunky than the original Black Bay. To be fair,
That's a hard chunkiness to
which
beat.
I mean, yeah, it was chunky. Like, but I think it's fine. Like, I've got a pretty fine tolerance for watch chunk these days, and I think that passed the bar for me, especially given how good the rest of the package was. And I agree that strap, that sort of leather-backed textile, was it leather or rubber-backed? I don't know. That composite strap was really, really nice on it and kept very adventure-y, in its aesthetic. And I think it's particularly good as I think the NATO is sort of phasing out in some ways from the mainline watch releases, like sort of maybe less cool than it was 5 years ago. And I don't know, that's just maybe an early trend take from me, and feel free to disagree with me on that. But
I'm gonna disagree with you on the popularity of NATO straps, Felix.
You reckon? Well,
yeah. This one was good. This was like a black with a yellow stripe to it that sort of matched the GMT hand. I thought it was actually really nicely paired.
Also,
fabric strap.
And this is the cynic in me, the profit margin on NATO straps must be phenomenal.
I would imagine so.
But Andy, I've got some chunk to talk about too.
Yep.
I saw you weren't able to attend this presentation from Amiga. Finally saw their 2022 releases, which were released early in the year, but they've just made it down under, and they are. I was really impressed overall. Had a pretty full assortment of watches, except the gold and green dialed Speedmaster wasn't available.
Is that the Ryan Reynolds we're going to call it?
Sure, let's call it that. But yeah, that one wasn't in the country, which was like the first one. I'm like, oh yeah, I love this one. And they're like, yeah, we don't have that. I'm like, oh okay. But they did have the sort of the Panda version of it with the gold dial, black subdials, all gold, everything else. It's a phenomenal. I mean, I've said it before. several times. I'm not really into to chronographs, but I would make a very special exception for a solid gold Speedmaster.
Do you think it'll ever happen?
For me,
Mm.
no. I mean, but I just think like I don't think I'd buy a regular Speedmaster. I'd buy a gold one.
What if you like consolidated everything in 20 years' time?
Maybe. I mean, look, I'd never say never, but like if you said to me, Felix, OT's going to buy you a solid gold watch,
Yeah.
it'd either be a day date or a solid gold Speedy, I reckon.
Is that what we're doing?
I think we've just confirmed it there.
I think it's going to happen.
Okay, done.
Jump in our Discord and let us know what our OT gift watches should be.
Solid gold plate.
It's got to be solid gold. You get one, I get one. That's how it goes. So yeah,
sure.
I'm 100% supportive of this endeavor.
But no, so the gold one was only part of it. They had updates to the Speedmaster 57. They were really nice. So they're manual now, I believe. So they're thinner. They've got the new bracelet. Cool. One that was a real surprise, and I should chuck this up on Instagram. I don't think I have. Burgundy dial.
Oh, did you see a moon swatch?
We talked about the moon swatch, but it was the location was in an Omega boutique, and the moon swatch is only available from Swatch boutiques. Andy,
I thought you might have been at headquarters.
No, but another one that I was really keen to see, and I was very happy with how it looked IRL, was that sort of green Seamaster 300. You remember
Looks
it? You
good.
remember the pictures? You remember the kerfuffle
Yes.
it caused?
Yes, still haven't seen it in person.
Really, really subtle. Like it's like I was in like boutiques, so pretty bright halogen style lights. From a distance, you'd think it was black. It wasn't like sort of Kermit green.
It's one of those greens.
Yeah, it was really, really nice. Especially on the green rubber strap. I would very much rate that. And it's such a tempting watch, the Seamaster Professional.
What else did you see that you like from Omega? Or is that it?
No, there was one other one I really liked, and there was another one that I was like, which was the Planet Ocean Ultra Deep.
The big boy.
So you remember this? They had a prototype a couple of years ago because they chucked it on a guy named Victor Vescovo's.
Yes, evil villain.
Yeah, we talked about that. They chucked it on his yacht, and it was very, very thick. I'm just about to send you a WhatsApp picture, Andy. I want your live react in audio format to the picture I've just sent you.
All right, let me hit download. Wow, Jesus.
And I've got a large wrist. I'm not afraid of...
That's like... Is that 1/3 of your wrist?
Yeah. And so that's that, believe it. So this is the titanium version, which is sort of the one that's pretty faithful to the prototype. It's thick, it's chunky, it's got like a cool manta ray lug system.
It does look cool, yeah.
There's a lot of cool stuff going on, but it is tall. It compares nothing to the more commercially released, I believe it's steel version, which kind of has like big Planet Ocean vibes. It's an incredibly ridiculous watch. But if incredibly ridiculous watches are your thing, go for it. The final thing I'll end on with Omega, because I know we're going to talk about other stuff. New Aquaterras in a range of colors. Really, really like classic assortment. You could, if you were choosing to compare Rolex to Omega, reference the sort of the OP color range. This is a bit more subtle, and they had a really nice one that I was immediately drawn to, which was in saffron, which is sort of like almost a mandarin yellow sort of really, really interesting watch style that I'd never really seen before, and it was really, really cool. They had some
saffron.
Yeah, they had some excellent colors across the range. There were also a bunch of ladies' watches with some with hardstone dials and all sorts of stuff going on. But yeah, Omega's had a colorful year in 2022, and I'm here for it. I think there's some real winners in that mix.
I love it. Well, Felix, before we move on, we should take a quick break. This week's episode of OT, the podcast, is sponsored by Panerai.
You know them for their iconic dive watches, but did you know they're also leaders when it comes to sustainability in watchmaking?
Absolutely, Felix. And that was very much on display this year at Watches and Wonders, where they showcased their new submersible 44 in e-steel.
Well done, Andy. Exactly. This is their new line of 44mm submersibles. You've got the classic Crown Guard, 300 meters of water resistance, and the in-house P900 movement. But the most exciting thing for me here is the e-steel case that's on offer.
Yeah, so E-Steel debuted last year in the Luminor model, and while it looks like regular steel, it's substantially recycled. 72 grams of the total weight of 137 grams is actually recycled, and that's about 52% Felix. Panerai is the first luxury brand to use recycled steel.
That's pretty cool. And the three different Quaranta Quattro e-steel models are on offer are, I think this might be your favorite, the lush green Verde Smeraldo,
It is.
the smoky grey Grijo Rochia, which I don't know, it sounds like a tasty drop to me, and of course the classic deep blue Profundo. They're really beautiful dials. They're sort of graduated from top to bottom, and they all come, of course, with those ceramic bezels.
Exactly, Felix. And if you caught our chat with Jeremy Jauncey, you would know that E-Steel is just part of Panerai's commitment to sustainability. They've made important strides in packaging, launching a new style of packaging which offers a 53% weight reduction. This is important for reducing carbon emissions as it's shipped around the world. And Panerai is aiming to have 30% of its collection designed and produced using recycle-based materials by 2025.
That's really, great sort of leadership to see from Panerai. And they're also committing to sustainability across other parts of the business. And what's impressive for me is that they're sharing those learnings in an open source way with others in the watch industry, including competitors, which I think means that they're leading the way to a better way of watchmaking.
Exactly. So if you want to find out more, head to your nearest Panerai boutique. In Australia, that means Sydney or Melbourne, but you can always head to panerai.com to discover all these models and much more.
Let's get back to the show. What are we talking about now?
And we're back. Films.
Oh, we've been watching some cinema recently, Andy. We've been texting each other.
I know.
And you've been texting my partner about some movies you've been watching.
I have been.
What have you been up to? What have you
really
been...
inefficient way of communicating with the two of you.
She's got a group chat going on.
Well, if Elise joined our Discord, life would be a lot easier.
She never uses WhatsApp either, so
No.
Maybe she has joined our Discord.
She's got a little sleeper account in there.
Yeah,
keeping an eye on your plans for Gold Speedmasters.
It's Gamertag88. That's her.
I watched the new Nick Cage film, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Oh yeah, he plays himself. Yeah, which
I think he plays a version of himself, but yes, he plays Nicolas Cage.
The character is called Nicolas Cage.
The character is him. Yeah, it is.
Very peak Nick Cage.
It's peak film. It's so good. It is. One of my favorite films I've seen in a long time.
Can you describe it to me in 3 words?
It's just hilarious.
Oh, it was a good 3 words.
It's a good 3 words. It is just Felix. It's top notch.
It's hilarious. You would say hilarious more than anything else. Like, is it thought provoking or dramatic or?
Well, here's the top line is Nicolas Cage, Pedro Pascal, Tiffany Haddish.
Okay.
What more do you need?
Daddy's a state of mind.
What more? Ike Barinholtz as well plays a part.
I'm not entirely sure who Ike Barinholtz is.
He's the jock from After Party.
Ah, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
The jock dad.
Yeah, I know him. He's in everything.
He's in everything. Neil Patrick Harris is briefly in it.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Go see it. And I feel like it's kind of leaving the cinemas at the moment, but
yeah, as I said to you, I'm not going to go see it at a cinema. I can't remember the last time I went to a cinema.
This is the first time in quite a while.
Actually, I know what I'm going to see at the cinema next. I've been saving myself.
What's that?
Top Gun 2.
I did see the trailer for Top Gun 2 whilst waiting for this to come on.
Ooh, that THX surround sound, I'm sure.
Looks all right.
Yeah, looks great. You also saw another movie that's dear to my heart that I would describe in 3 words as greatest film made.
We don't deserve him. Paddington 2.
Paddington, and you've seen Paddington 1?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just hadn't got around to Paddington 2, and you'll understand why eventually. But you'll understand why. Wow, we don't deserve Paddington. The world is too cruel a place for such a sweet boy.
Yeah, it's a movie that's got everything, and also as I like to say, it's actually a fairly pointed critique of the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
Just as the first one was a fairly pointed critique of illegal boat arrivals.
Mm.
But Hugh Grant's greatest role, Phoenix Buchanan, whew,
Does it make you want to be a better father?
no, it's like looking in a mirror when we look at Phoenix Buchanan.
Uh,
No, it's an exceptional film, and I think people who haven't seen it maybe haven't assumed it's for them because it's a kids movie, but
no,
it,
it's
it
not.
transcends age and social class and everything.
It is incredible. Try not to cry.
Hey, I saw another movie the other day too that
What did you see?
I don't know if you've seen it yet. I'm amazed it took me this long to see it. Dune.
I've not seen it.
Is it your jam?
I don't know because I haven't seen it.
Are you aware of what it's about? It's like space opera
It's
sci-fi.
like sci-fi, yeah.
Not
Is,
you?
is it worth seeing? Is it? You know my jam? Is it my jam?
It's pretty action. Like, did you see Blade Runner 2049?
No, I
Okay,
didn't.
so it's. Did you see Arrival?
I did.
So
That was
it's the
good.
same director, Denis Villeneuve. Really, really good. He's and the thing that reminded me really strongly of this between the Blade Runner and Dune was the vehicle design is exceptional,
Okay.
and that's potentially a really niche call to make. But I think in space opera sci-fi, it's pretty. It captures the spirit of like 70s sci-fi in a really
Did you enjoy it?
modern way. Yeah. And it's a movie like I love the book. You know, as a teenager growing up, it's I've read it a few times. It does a really really good job in a lot of ways, and it's very operatic and it's very over the top in how it treats some things, but it's like melodrama in. It's really stylized. Yeah, I really, really rate it. Really great performances from the oldest Sarsgaard, the dad Sarsgaard. I can't remember his name. Stellan Sarsgaard,
All the scars.
and Timothy Chalamet. He's got
Okay.
a real quiet intensity to him. In I've seen him act in a few things now, and he's very taut. Which I really enjoyed it a lot.
Keeps it
Interesting
taut.
keeps it like a toiga.
What?
Interesting to see where it goes. But you know what I didn't notice in the film, and I think would not have been out of place on the maybe on the wrist of a Fremen still suit.
Richard Mill.
I was going to say an Artem strap, but
Oh,
maybe both.
tell you what. Let's talk about Artem Straps for a minute, Felix.
Just a hot second.
Just a hot second. ArtemStraps.com. Been a supporter of OT the podcast for quite some time. We might say they're the best sailcloth straps to come out of Australia. Would you agree with me?
I haven't seen any better. Let's put it that way. But I also got a text message, and I
Oh.
think it was a random picture that my brother had sent me from I think Fratello. And it was a picture of someone had taken off their Instagram, and he's like, "Hey, I really like this strap," and I'm like,
Ooh. What was
"Mate,
the watch?
I can't remember. I think it was maybe a Tudor.
Mhm.
I can't remember to be honest because it was all about the strap. It was a blue Artem strap, Andy.
Steals the show. I think it's a blue Black Bay
Maybe
58.
it
I
was.
think that's what he might have been sent.
Yeah." And he's like, "I love this watch." I'm like, "Mate, you're talking to the right person. These are exceptional straps, and I can hook you up. It would look great." My brother's currently wearing a Baltic that I've lent him.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think that'll have to make its way over to his place and get on his wrist.
Well, if you want to be like Morgsy, check out artemstraps.com, artem.straps on Instagram. You can see the pairings of, their famous sailcloth straps, but also their NATO straps, which, I'm a big fan of. They're really soft. They're really comfortable.
Yep.
Extremely well-made stuff. Get on there, leave some comments, tell them the colors you want to see. They're a new business, they're a new brand. Been around for a little while now, but they are listening to, the people. So if you said, hey, I want to
Ooh.
see a lilac strap for my, I don't know, lilac dial watch,
Mm.
maybe they'll do it. Maybe
I
they'll do
want
it. Let's peer pressure them.
I want green. I mean, maybe the more commercially sensible route to go before lilac in
Mm,
terms of releasing colors would be like that sort of khaki olive green
that'd be cool.
on that Seamaster 300 I was just talking about. That would be a hot combo.
And that would also suit your gold Speedy. Here
Hey,
we go. All right. Well, Felix, I think it is probably time now to get your dear friend, your peer, your colleague,
my mentor.
your mentor.
Mentor and tutor.
I think he's everyone's mentor and tutor. Ross Povey on the line.
Let's do it. Ross Povey. He's
Mm.
a guy we love, a guy we know, especially under his Instagram name of Tudor Collector. He's which is not just an Instagram name; it's also a company, I guess.
It's a lifestyle.
Founded a lifestyle, a site. So safe to say he knows a fair bit about the old Rose and Shield Tudor watches. Should come as no surprise that he's also well across Rolex, as he's co-authored Daytona Perpetual. On top of that, he's my colleague at Revolution. He's the EIC of Revolution UK. His work has also popped up at various places like Ridicule, The Telegraph, and anywhere else good watch journalism is required. So, Ross, it's an honour to speak to you. Welcome to OT the podcast. How are you?
Well, thank you so much for the invite, and I'm well, thank you. Yeah, it's beginning to turn into late spring, early summer here in the UK. So it's time of optimism, I think.
Should hit the high teens, maybe a couple of days over 20 degrees.
I mean, steady.
Shorts weather, definitely.
Shorts coming out.
Shorts, flip flops, vest, you name it.
Sunscreen.
Yeah.
Well, Ross, I want to ask you. I want to start by asking why Tudor? How did you end up collecting Tudor, and why?
It's a good question that I am asked from time to time, and I think it's quite simply because I thought they were cool. I cut my teeth on the early days of the Vintage Rolex forum, which I think probably had its heyday from around, say, 2005 for 10 or 12 years. And I was one of the early people on that forum in maybe as early as 2002, 2003. And I think one of the often forgotten things about vintage Rolex is a lot of the information that we know now that we take for granted was actually discussed and put into some kind of academic shape, for want of a better phrase, on the VRF. All the world's leading experts were on there, or that are leading or considered leading experts now, were on the VRF, and it was a great place where people would hang out, discuss watches, where things like the matte dials in the 5513s were given the chronology and the names, the feet first, the maxi dials, marks 1 to 5, same with the Daytonas. And I think it was very important, and people take this information and knowledge for granted now, but it was a large part of that was created was through a concerted effort on the VRF. So I was part of that group, and it was an exciting time, and vintage Rolex became this cool thing to be into. I'd say cool. I mean, globally it wasn't, and probably still isn't, but I mean, in terms of the watch world, it had a real cachet and was becoming important in terms of auctions and collectors' interest. So I would spend probably far too much time on the VRF, and on my time there, occasionally across the sea of black dial Submariners, this blue dial would pop out, and with Daytona's Panda, Reverse Panda, the occasional Newman. Sometimes there would be these oyster case chronos with incredible dials, oranges and blues, nothing like I'd ever seen before. And over the time, I began to understand that Tudor was part of that world. Maybe at that time was completely misunderstood. Not a lot was known about it. And it just appealed to me. And then Tudor Collector became a passion for me, whereby I wanted to start really documenting and looking at what Tudor was and trying to do what we'd done with vintage Rolex, but with Tudor, and it kind of took on a life of its own, really. So it's really down to the fact that I thought they looked cool.
Yeah, and I think that's a common story of those sort of early forum days, and really shaping that zeitgeist that's sort of become the vintage watch trend more broadly.
Yeah.
Let's fast forward a little bit from Tudor's sports watches of the 70s and 80s and talk about Tudor's watches of 2022. So we're recording this pretty fresh after Watches and Wonders. You were there. You saw the wonders and the watches. What are your top line thoughts of Tudor showing?
I thought it was really strong. For me, Black Bay has become its own force in the watch world. I mean, it's as big as Tudor itself in some ways. I remember Black Bay launching in 2012, so this year's actually the 10-year anniversary of Black Bay. And for me, the watches are the kind of the leading element of what's defined Tudor for the modern era. That's not groundbreaking, by the way, because Black Bay's become huge across the whole of not just the watch collecting world, but the world in general. People know the Black Bay who aren't even into watches, which is something very different for me personally. I remember when my early love for Tudor was at a time when they weren't available in the UK or the US, and so people's knowledge of it was non-existent pretty much. Fast forward to now, it's as big as any brand in the UK here, certainly. I'm guessing the same in the US and Oz.
Yeah.
And it really has set out its stall as an incredible quality watch at a more affordable price point, which is exactly what Hans Wilsdorf wanted when he founded the brand in 1926. So when you are at something like Watches and Wonders, you're pretty sure that you're not going to be disappointed, because it's a line that has been reinterpreted in so many ways, in so many different guises. So take the Pro, for example. The new mono block ceramic hour markers on the matte dial is something that's, for me, very celebratory of the old vintage watches, but done very much in the context of the 21st century. The way they've redesigned the winding crown, it's all within that voice of Black Bay, but every time we see it, it's a little bit different. It's been tweaked in a way and made interesting, and that for me is why I'm always really fascinated by Tudor and their offerings. And I think 22 was good because the steel and gold has been really popular for them. And I think, people that don't want or don't like, say, the GMT Master from Rolex with that ceramic bezel, they can get that from so they can get what they want from Tudor with the more vintage style aluminium insert in the bezel. And I think for me, it's really taken on a life of its own with collectors.
That's really, really interesting. And Andy and I recently saw the Tudor and Rolex pieces, and I'm sure we'll talk about them in a little bit more detail. But I still want to keep it a bit broad. And something you've just said is quite remarkable if you think about it. So less than 10 years ago, Tudor wasn't in the US or the UK markets. And I think, I'm not sure of the numbers, you might be across it, but now they must be top 5, top 10 sort of brand, up there with Rolex and Omega and the other, giants.
Mm-hmm.
What do you put that incredible sort of growth down to?
That is a good question, because you're right. I mean, it was 2014 that it was relaunched in the UK, and really nobody knew about it. It's like, I had friends and family who knew about Tudor Collector, who saw it as kind of that sort of funny hobby that Ross does. And then when Tudor billboards started appearing in the UK, people would send me pictures. One friend actually sent me a picture saying, "How come your watch brand's on the side of a Boss?" That's how unknown it was. I think that they've been very, very clever with their use of ambassadors. I think particularly David Beckham in the UK. When that was announced, I think it caused a kind of a mixed emotion from the watch community. But I think undeniably it's given the watch a massive platform and raised the awareness of it in the public eye. It was a stroke of genius, is my honest view, because Beckham, particularly in the UK, is he's a cultural icon, and for him to be so, because we know David Beckham's into watches, for him to have chosen Tudor, I think says a lot about the brand. And so, I think that's a large part of it. I mean, you guys will remember in the early days of Tudor relaunching, so I call it like the Phoenix from the Flames in 2010 with the Heritage Chrono.
Yes.
For a good number of years, if you were writing about it, the PR angle was always try not to mention Rolex in your copy. So, talk
Yes.
about,
I'm
the family. I used to use the phrase the Wilsdorf stable. Anything to kind of hint at it, but not overtly talk about that relationship.
I definitely had that conversation with some Rolex representatives about,
Yeah, exactly.
we
But
want to
then,
be our own brand.
yeah, but do you remember though? I think you were there, Felix, at the launch of the GMT, the Black Bay GMT, at Basel
Uh,
World.
Possibly.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Oh,
2016.
yeah, that was in
Project.
the Swiss naval base, wasn't it?
No, that was the year before. That was for the Black
Okay.
Bay Bronze. I'm not sure there was a dinner the night before in 2016, but anyway, that year when we were in the presentation, do you remember they put a slide up of the new Black Bay GMT next to the new Pepsi ceramic
Yes.
bezel Pepsi, and they said
Yep.
this is a family celebration of the GMT, and that was a huge change in the direction of the communication of the brand. So I think where Tudor had got to in building its own reputation, and becoming a serious player in the industry, that changed then to openly celebrate. And now you in the communication from Tudor, you see that it says, it was founder of Rolex Hans Wilsdorf wanted a watch with all the hallmarks of the Rolex quality, but at a more affordable
Mm.
price point. And so I think then the celebration of the fact they're from the same family pushed it up into another league again. So I think that across those two specific ways of communicating about the brand, I think that really helped put them to where they are now, which is, as you said a few minutes ago, a big top 5, top 10 player.
It's certainly really interesting, especially with the way that they're communicating and, how they lean on their history and how they choose to. And I guess the next question I have, you mentioned 10, 15 years ago, there really wasn't that much information. A lot of it came from the early days of the internet and the forums.
Mhm.
But being so well versed in the history of Tudor, is there something in their heritage that they've not tapped into yet, but you think they should?
Um, I think for me, one of the most interesting Tudor watches is the Big Block Chrono,
Yeah.
because that was released in 1976, which was 12 years before Rolex released an auto self-winding chronograph. And I think with the Black Bay Chrono, we're seeing a version of the Big Block, but I don't feel like that 3 register layout has been fully explored yet. It maybe won't ever happen, but that would be an interesting watch. But certainly in terms of the kind of panda and reverse panda dial layout, we're seeing that. Ranger was always a brilliant watch in the vintage
Mm.
community. It still
Yeah.
is, they released the Tudor Ranger, which was, a lot bigger than people had wanted, or had imagined it would be in a re-edition. So that was done. We've had the home plate, we've had the Monte Carlo, we've had riffs on the Snowflake now. So I think they've done a very comprehensive job. I mean, even the Royal is a revisiting of of those integrated bracelet watches that they did in the 70s, the Ranger 2, which they also
Mm.
looked at a little bit with the North Flag range. But I think what I feel is more and more it's forging its own identity. We're certainly seeing that now with Pelagos, is my feeling that, I've talked till I'm blue in the face, no pun intended, about the new Pelagos FXD. I love that watch. I mean, that watch to me is something, incredible. Not just the watch, which is, I love, but also the story behind it. This confirmation that for me, having been, I see one of my main specialisms with Tudor is the military watches. And so with P01, when that came out, that was Tudor officially talking about their relationship, their quite deep relationship with the US Navy. And then
Yeah.
FXD was that confirmation about their collaboration with the Marine Nationale, the French Navy. So these watches have always been really fascinating for me personally, and the context around them, like the stuff of dreams. If I, rewind 10 years when I was, spending sometimes months on end trying to find ex-divers from different countries who might have been issued a Tudor, that hard work of slow, painstakingly piecing stories together. Tudor have come out and kind of clarified some of those points, which is, for me personally, that's really important. But I think the watches that they've done that with are also very cool. And so Pelagos has become its own kind of professional line within the brand. The reworked, quickly jumping back to Watches and Wonders, the new reworked steel and gold black bays in the 4 sizes now. The way they've reshaped the cases to have rounder sides, they've redesigned the crown. So these watches are looking very current, in my view, and very of the moment, but also they're celebrating those oyster princes from the 50s and 60s. So they're always looking forward, but they've got one foot, in their heritage to celebrate, the great watches of the past. For me, I think one of the most fascinating elements of vintage Tudor are the oyster watches from the 50s and 60s. And I've got a friend over here, Paul Russell, and he and I sort of always egging each other on finding new dial variants that one of us hasn't seen before. And I'm nowhere near, I think, discovering all the different dial versions. And maybe that's something over time that Tudor will look at.
Yeah. Do you think we'll see a Tudor Submariner? I know that we have the Black Bay, which is obviously a dive watch, and we have the Pelagos, which is a more serious dive watch. But do you think we'll ever see a Tudor Submariner again?
I mean, you never know. I mean, so many times I've been surprised. My feeling is that no, we won't, because whilst there's this new family approach to the brand, I think very much Submariner belongs to Rolex and Black Bay is Tudor's. It's the similar story about the snowflake hands. I often read comments of, "Oh, this great, but just if they just put Mercedes hands on," and it's like, okay, but that's kind of missing the point of what a Tudor is and what a Black Bay is. I don't honestly think they ever will do a Submariner, but then you never know. I mean, Tudor are so much freer than their big brother in terms of doing cool, interesting things, experimenting, pushing things out. Rolex has never officially released a limited edition watch. Tudor do that. The Black Bay Chrono Dark, they are limited to the number of capped players for the All Blacks. That is a finite number. They're also, only watch. They do the unique pieces. Rolex has never officially, publicly released a unique piece. So Tudor are allowed to have a lot of fun. And
yes,
I'm not saying it will never happen, but I don't know. I can't see it. I think Black Bay's too important. And I think the Submariner would just confuse the message, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's 100% agree. Like, one, from the brand point of view, it makes no sense, but also it is a Submariner. It's just a, slightly different name and one or two minor tweaks, and there you go.
Yeah.
Now, Ross, I've got a question. You've obviously been Tudor's, number 1, number 2 fan for a long, long time. They've finally recognised your hard work and dedication, and they've got you on board to design a watch or revive a historic model in a new sort of guise. What would you have them make?
Oh my goodness, nobody's ever asked me that. You have stumped me there, sir. What would I do?
Go nuts, and they can't say no. So you can be as wild or as brand guideline breaking as you want.
Look, I love the home play, and I know they did a heritage edition of that's how they relaunched Tudor in 2010. The new Black Bay Chrono case is stunning for me, and it deals with some of the issues with the heritage chrono where the case was very thick. Now they've got their own in-house movement. They've reworked the case. They've got those incredible vintage style pushers. They are rolling out a new style crown that we saw on the Pro and on the Black Bay in the 4 sizes in steel and gold. I think a really cool reimagined home plate in the new case, with the Cyclops on the glass, with the new style crown that they use with those Mark I style pushers that we now see on the Black Bay Chrono. I think that's what I would put if I was kind of given, carte blanche. I think that's what I would do. I would get in there and put that together, and that would be my ultimate modern Tudor.
Love it. Ross, before we move on to a bit more broader chat around maybe Rolex and watches and wonders, I would love to know, where can people learn more about, Tudor's history and vintage Tudor? What's the go-to place or resource?
I mean, in my mind, there's only one, and that's tudorcollector.com.
Love it. Good plug. Good
Yeah.
plug.
We'll link it in show notes.
Yeah, I mean, Tudor Collector has been, many years of collating all this information. We have the Oyster Dial project on there where we share as many dial versions as we can. But also, interestingly, Tudor's website's really good because they've got the history stuff on there. And I remember maybe 8-9 years ago, 8 years ago, 2014, I don't know whether you received that Tudor history book. I think it was a press-only thing, but it was it charted all the models and all the dates that they were released, and that's a really cool resource as well. And some of that does exist on the website currently. And there's stuff on various websites that I've written. I don't know. I mean, yeah, there's it's funny now because there's a lot of information about Tudor on the internet. I think I was fortunate that around the time that the brands relaunched in the US and the UK, if anybody Googled Tudor, I came up and Tudor Collector came up, and that's where I was contacted a lot by not just the press but by collectors, and I still get many emails a week from people who are asking me about, I found this, or I found this in a drawer, or I bought this recently, what do you think? Or I'm thinking of buying this, what do you think? And so I still get a lot of contact. My favourite emails are when ex-military divers have been researching on the internet, and inevitably Tudor Collector is probably the main place that people will find information on the military watches, and it's always great when they contact me and say, I was reading about it and I was issued a watch, and that's happened to me with a few, particularly with the South African Navy, which is one of my specialism areas of specialism. When those divers reach out to me and they help me piece the puzzle together of the watches, it's like manna from heaven for me.
Yeah, that's cool, and I think that's sort of what it's all about on a very sort of personal level. And you've just reminded me with that Tudor history book. There's a local link, Andy, that I'm not sure you're across. So there's a square watch that's featured in there from 1932, which is co-signed Catanax, which is a Armadale in Melbourne jeweller. That was a silversmith back in the day and made the Caulfield Cup, which is a racing trophy. They still exist in a very, very sort of different form. But yeah, Tudor's interesting in Australia because it never went away. It always had a market presence from a very, very early time and, all the way through to now. But yeah.
Okay, so tell me about, beyond the Tudors that you collect, I know that you're a Rolex fan, you've told us, but tell us about your passion for oddball gem set Daytonas.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? I think the best way I can describe it is almost like a Jekyll and Hyde way of appreciating watches, because on one hand, I love old military battered Tudor subs and the old oysters. And then on the other hand, my other real area of interest is modern gem set Daytonas and rare Daytonas. And they are as different as as chalk and cheese, really, in many ways. I mean, there may be some link between the fact that what appealed to me about Tudor were those interesting dialed chronographs, and I think with the Perpetual Daytona, from '88 onwards, Rolex really started experimenting and embellishing the watches and putting, incredible dials in the watches, gem setting the cases. And yeah, I don't really know what it is about that, but again, it was something that I started to get into when people weren't as into them as they are now. So I have an Instagram page called 165 Club, which is a reference to the first three digits of the reference of the Daytona. And I'm going to be launching a 165 Club website later this year, which will be, again, a resource about those watches, with as much information as I can get. And as you mentioned kindly at the beginning, the Pucci book, Daytona Perpetual, I was involved in writing that. So yeah, I mean, very different to Tudor, but equally quite misunderstood in the market, or they have been for a while, because there's so many weird oddball variations on the dials, on the bezels, on the reference numbers, on the, some watches were made in two examples, some were series produced, but people didn't want them, so they were then made differently. So the classic example of that is the Daytona Beach, one of my favourite versions of the Daytona. But when it was released, it was very, very unpopular. And I hear stories now from dealers who tell me they used to be able to go into Rolex boutiques, buy a Beach for 30 to 35% discount, bring the watch out, take the colourful dial out, put a black or white dial in, put a black leather strap on, and make profit. And they just throw the dials in the drawer. So things like that, they weren't popular. People didn't appreciate them at the time. And a bit like Tudor, I think they've been largely misunderstood for many years.
And that's something that, sort of echoing your sort of that VRF heyday. If I'm not mistaken, I'm guessing that around that time would have been the era of the infamous leopard print Daytona, which I certainly recall from forums back then. Everyone, thinking was an abomination in every way, shape, or form, and a symbol of the death of good taste.
Yeah.
Did you like it at the time, or has appreciation do you like it now?
I think it's one of those watches that will be really important in the midterm future of Rolex in terms of vintage and, or neo-vintage collecting. Because that watch came out in, I want to say 2004 or 2005. And it caused an absolute storm. Now, at the time, back then, it was all about vintage, really, for me personally. And the modern Rolex collecting hadn't really taken off as such as we know it now. So now there are people, there's a whole industry in modern Rolex, isn't there? That goes without saying. But at the time, there wasn't really that collector mentality about these watches particularly. And so people were up in arms about it, but it didn't really garner a lot of attention in the vintage world because it wasn't really part of our mindset of those, of those days. Looking back now, I think it's cool. I mean, I really like it. I think it's an iconic watch. I think the word iconic gets used too much, but I think it really was the first time that Rolex really, really pushed gem set. It's just taken for granted now. Open any auction catalogue, you're going to see a white gold Daytona or yellow gold Daytona with baguette stone dial, pavé dial, or stone dial. But when these watches first came out, a lot of the watches that we see now were not just available in authorized dealers. A lot of them were special orders. A bit like now with the Rainbow. Even as members of the press, we don't get to see the full range that Rolex releases each year. There are always at least 2 very special Daytonas, and they tend to then appear on Instagram maybe 3 or 4 months after Watches and Wonders, when the first VVIP customer is offered the chance to buy one. But the Leopard was a full-on wholesale release. And it's a watch
That's right, it was, yeah.
It was in like outdoor. I remember billboards of it and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was like, we sell gem set Daytonas, where before it was a kind of a bit, a quiet word with select people. This is what we do. This is the watch that we are now pushing. And that was a big move for the brand in my mind. Now, interestingly, again, this is the kind of the researching geek part of me. But there are a good number of Leopard Daytonas with K-serial cases from 2002.
Mm-hmm.
So we know a couple of similar watches. So the reference is 116598. The Leopard had SACO. We call it Seiko as its nickname, which was Sapphire's Cognac, an abbreviation of that. So only in the last 18 months, 2 yellow gold watches the same as that watch, but with Saro, SARO, Sapphire Rose, have appeared at Phillips. So they had the same bezel as the Leopard, but rose-coloured sapphires, and they had pavé dials with ruby hours. But those watches date from 2000, so they've got the long extended lugs with larger set brilliant cut diamonds on the fixed lugs, and those watches were P serial, so from 2000. So Rolex were doing this, but those Leopard watches were the first time that reference was really truly shared on a mass communication scale. And I think for that reason, it's seen as an important watch, and the price of that watch has quadrupled in 4 or 5 years. I remember when they were, dealers would sit on them for a while at £30,000. It was always an expensive watch before this recent crazy boom, but now they're over 100k. So for that reason, it's become another inaccessible Rolex for most people. So, but I think the importance of that watch in the culture of interesting pieces is important.
It's an interesting point, because they did they did introduce that to the world, but I don't think they really sold. I mean, I'm thinking back 5 years ago, gem set Daytonas were very much, private clients, VVIPs just kind of collected them. They didn't even really get worn. It wasn't a watch you would wear, because you can't really service, you can service them, but you can't really get, spare parts if you knock a gem out the bezel or out of the case. You can't really polish the cases, right? So when did it change with gem set Daytonas? Because I think it obviously did. And, Rolex's reaction has been quite interesting to that, because they went from, hey guys, we do this, to, almost shying away from it, maybe because it went too far the other way. But when and why do you think it changed? Because it must have been in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is probably in the past 5 years. I think if going back 5 years, there were not many dealers offering these. So I'm talking about pre-owned dealers. There were a couple of Italians. I mean, the Italians have always been ahead of the game with gem set Daytona. They've been big fans, and there are 2 very prominent Italian dealers who have built up the world's best collections of these watches. We're seeing that now spreading across the entire industry. So you see gem set Daytonas in most of the auctions. Most high-end dealers have at least 1 or 2. And yeah, you're right. I've got an old advert from the 90s that Rolex put in an American magazine of a yellow gold gem set Zenith Daytona with a ruby dial, and I don't know what colour the bezel is. It's rose or violet sapphires. And then the Leopard came, and it really massively became in the fore. And then it didn't really then, until the Rainbow came along, it was still a quiet thing. I'm not sure. I don't think the Leopard was commercially successful, if I'm being honest.
No, surely
No.
not.
No, and
Nicolas Cage bought one.
Yeah,
that's your customer, and there's only one of him.
yeah. And then the Rainbows came, and it was like, okay, wow, this is something different. This is something amazing. Again, the communication of that was the Rainbows have always been very publicly communicated. And I think partly the issue is that they became so hot on the grey market that Rolex doesn't like that I think then they started to realise that, number one, they can't make these watches in mass numbers like they can a Sub or a GMT Master. That's like the crux of this. But also, communicating about these watches takes away from some of this kind of niche special appeal of them, whereby VIP clients can be offered them by, retailers. The guy that always shows these watches is Mike Tay from the Hourglass in Singapore, and he gets to see them, and he shows them on Instagram. And a lot of the kind of the rumor that happens before Watches and Wonders, he kind of puts some of those myths to bed, and because within the Daytona community, there's a lot of talk about what they're going to do this year. What can they do? So this year it was white gold and yellow gold rainbows, and a cognac bezel yellow gold watch on oyster flex with baguette cut cognac sapphires on the dial. But these watches are not really communicated through the press in any way, because number one, they can't make enough of them, and number two, they hold a certain cachet for special clients of the brand through the retailers. And so it's a kind of, I don't really like that if you know thing that you see from time to time, but Gemset Daytona is a bit like that.
Yeah, and I think also we're at a point in sort of the, that mass awareness of, education around Rolex is, I think we've reached a critical point where enough people understand that this is a special thing, and which is leading to the sort of the situation we're in now with these gem set watches. But you mentioned sort of, the expectations around Watches and Wonders and what Rolex were going to release. So the obvious question is, what did you think about what they released?
I thought, well, let's stick with the gem set. So the Yachtmaster to me was a great move, because the white gold Yachtmaster in 42, in my mind, always had been maybe 2 millimeters too big. And Rolex, I think, played a blinder, releasing that in 40 in white gold, and then doing the sapphire and diamond bezel, because that, going back to, I'm kind of contradicting myself in some ways, but then them communicating that is actually making a gem set watch available. And so for me, that was and more than that, it's just a great looking watch. I love it. Perfect size for a Rolex sports watch, 40 mil. The way they did the colours on the bezel is stunning. The case is lovely as well. So that for me was a great hit, because that ticks a lot of boxes. 40 mil sports watch, gem set on the oyster flex is always a winner. So I love that. But what did you boys think of that?
I love it. Sapphire diamond. The colorway is perfect.
Yeah.
And obviously they brought the white gold gem set Daytona back as well, by the looks of things.
The rainbow.
Yeah, the rainbow.
Yeah. So there was a yellow gold and a white gold rainbow that came out this year, which again, they've, so that reimagining of those watches is different to the first yellow and white golds, because they had the rainbow bezel, but they had black dials with gold crystal subdials and just brilliant cut diamonds at the hours. When they brought out the Ever Rose rainbow, they matched the hour markers to the gradient on the bezel, and so they've
Stunning.
Yeah, I mean it's beautiful. So for those watches now to be available in white and yellow gold, kind of brings the trinity of them together, and also it's available with a black dial or a full pavé dial in both metals. So I mean, what's not to love about the rainbow? I mean, it's almost a whole new definition of wristwear, isn't it? It's almost transcends what a watch is, the Rainbow Daytona. Not just in terms of the way it's put together, but in its cultural significance.
It's really strong, isn't it? It's become an icon amongst the icon that is the Rolex Daytona, and it's sort of so many people know the rainbow, and it's they call it the rainbow, and it's not only does Rolex own this and own that, they own the rainbow. Like that's theirs, and it's this contradiction that they don't want to talk about it, and they don't want to promote it that much. But God, they do some nice things with gems, don't they?
Yeah, they do. I mean, the Saru, the different gem set GMT Masters, the Submariners, the day dates, they're all beautifully done, and it's not just about getting a watch and sticking some gems on it. The artistry behind the way they do that is stunning. The quality. I've got a little book called The Art of Gem Setting. It's like an official little Rolex book, and the level of detail that they go to do those gem set pieces is incredible. The selection of stones, the way they're set, the way they cut them, it's beyond even what most jewelry houses do. And this is an addition onto Rolex being one of the greatest watchmakers of all time. It is fascinating, but it's very Rolex the way they do it. Everything is done.
So let me ask you this, Ross: Is there a gem set Daytona that I can buy? That's maybe it's not six figures. It's still going to be expensive. It's going to be precious metal. It's going to have a bunch of sparkly stones on it. But does it exist, or are they all hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not pushing $750,000?
Andy, before you answer, Ross, I got 2 words for you. Aftermarket.
No, Felix.
No.
I think Ross has a solution for me.
Wash your mouth out, Felix.
Dirty dog.
Right. They've become crazy. However, there is a watch that I think is misunderstood, maybe not misunderstood, it's just been overlooked, which is the white gold reference 116589 RBR. Now, RBR is used in a couple of different ways, but on the 116589, RBR refers to 2 rows of brilliant cut diamonds on the bezel. So
yep, looking at it now.
Is it like 120?
It's under $100,000.
Oh yeah. So no, I'm saying the number of diamonds on the bezel. It's
$1,000 a diamond.
Yeah, no, but they are way under 6 figures still, and I think that's a good buy. And these precious metal Daytonas from 2000s, they were available. In fact, I think you could still get your AD to switch dials out for you from the catalogue, so you see them with a range of different dials. So in terms of gem setting, I think that's gem set Daytona. I think that's a watch that is still reasonably affordable, and that will continue to just grow. Like anything with Daytona on the dial seems to just be hotter than
exponential.
Yeah,
it's the Daytona tax.
Yeah.
Now, Ross, we've covered off the divers and the diamonds. I just want to take a second to see if there was anything at Watches and Wonders that you saw that didn't come from the stable of Wilsdorf that was particularly outstanding to you. Perhaps, and this is something that I'd like to get your take on. I've always thought that one of the few brands that can compete with Rolex when it comes to gem setting is Chopard.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of quality cut, color grading and all that sort of stuff. they on the same level. So was there any nice Chopards you spotted or anything else from Geneva?
I did like the Chopard watches, yeah. I thought they were very, very, very strong this year. I'm trying to pick some. One of my favourites that I saw was the JLC Perpetual Calendar Polaris. I don't know whether you boys have seen that watch on the rubber strap.
In
nice.
gold with a blue dial, was it?
Yeah. I thought that was just brilliant. I really loved that. I did, as I said, I like the Chopard watches. Do you know what I really loved was the Hublot Classic Fusion. I've always liked the Olinsky watches, but this time they did an Olinsky that you could also have paved as well, and the combination of the way they set the case, because the dial and the bracelet, the whole thing is very Olinsky in its construction, and the way the diamonds were set on that watch and bracelet to me were really cool. I mean, I really liked that. What else? I thought the tag plasma was really interesting. Yeah, I mean, it was a good show. There were loads of really great watches. I thought the Cartier Crash, was it called Latigue? The Tiger. I thought that was, again, quite on point. It was, the Crash has a similar cachet to the Daytona, I guess. It's sort of, Daytona is almost like its own. I've often said this, it's its own microcosm of watch collecting. It's almost like a brand outside. A bit like, I think there's a story, isn't there, that at one point AP thought about creating another brand called Royal Oak. I think Rolex could have another brand called Daytona, and I think if Cartier were going to have a brand, it would be, certainly at the minute, it would be Crash. And so that Tiger Crash was a bit like a rainbow Daytona. It's like taking what's already an iconically cool watch, and look, this is what we can also do with it. I know there've been other incredible versions of the Crash gem set and diamonds and stuff, but that for me was a real showcase watch.
Leveling up. Yes, no, stunning. Good choices, Ross. Well, look, as you know, as an avid listener of OT the podcast, the last question we ask our guests is for a recommendation, and it's something that you've been enjoying that you think Felix and I and our listeners will also enjoy, not watch related. Could be something you're watching on Netflix, could be a book, could be a competitor podcast, could be an audiobook, could be anything.
What have I been enjoying? Do you know what I've been really loving on Netflix? Is Ozark.
Oh yeah.
And so its final season is season 4, I think, and part 2, so the last 8 or however many episodes, launched today on Netflix.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
In the UK?
In the UK, we're getting the last run of 8 episodes.
I know what I'm doing after this call.
The end of the
story.
So
you're not doing any work today, are you, Ross? You've got a...
I've got a lot. Actually, I've got quite a busy day, but I watch it. My wife and I enjoy watching that in the evening. So certainly there'll be an Ozark evening in the Povey household today.
Well, that sounds. I'd like to say it sounds good, but to be honest, it sounds tense and stressful. If Ozarks hasn't changed since I watched it last,
it's incredible.
It has. It's very wholesome. It's a family show. Felix.
Nice. So like Parks and Recreation, but with more drug dealing.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
nice. And more parks.
It is tense, but the main character, Marty, his face, how he just plays that role so brilliantly. So I absolutely love that. So I would I'll be honest with you. My wife and I watched the first episode a while back, and at the end of it, we were like, and we just didn't go back to it. And then a relative said to us, "Oh, by the way, we've watched Ozark." Like, yeah, we watched episode 1. And no, you've really got to stick with it. It's amazing.
Stay the course. If you've not watched any of it, stay the course, guys.
Yeah, you've got to go get through that first couple of episodes. and you're richly rewarded with TV gold.
Well,
Love it.
that's a great recommendation, Ross. So
Thanks, Ross.
thank you for that. We're going to go and enjoy some. Is Jason Bateman?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll go enjoy some Jason Bateman, some Rolex, and some Tudor. Have a great day.
Thanks, Ross.
Cheers, guys.
We're here. We are very, very clear in our love of Ross. That was great. I am now going to hunt. We didn't even pick up on this connection. You would watch Nick Cage in Unbearable something talent. Nick Cage has the greatest gem set Tudor Rolex ever. That
We talk about Nick Cage, I'm pretty sure.
we do, yeah. We talk about that ridiculous watch that everyone hated, and now he's a very cool eyepiece. Why didn't we put those dots together? Ridiculous.
I don't know. But if you know Nick Cage,
Yes.
email us, otthepodcast@gmail.com, or you can kind of link us up in a DM chat on Insta, ot.podcast. Of course, Felix, who are our sponsors this week, we need to thank.
Oh, Panerai.
Panerai. Thank you so much, Panerai.
Yeah, lovely work. Also, Artem, keep strapping on.
Keep on strapping on. We'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, see you later.